Hello and welcome to Getting Your Money's Worth, the show that focuses on value. I'm Judith West, and our guest today is Hannah Seligson, whose book, New Girl on the Job, came out recently. Advice from the trenches. You've been in the trenches, huh?
I have been in the trenches.
Okay, New Girl on the Job. What possessed you to write this book?
Oh, see, Judith, I needed a great comeback story. I was fired from my first job 9 months into it. And during that period, I realized that there was no canon of wisdom out there for young women. So I decided to write the career guide that I wish I had had, because I think you're seeing a dynamic that I touched on in a New York Times article called Girl Power at School but Not at the Office, where you see a real culture of female achievement in an academic arena, but it's not translating into the workplace.
Yeah, and also there's kind of a point of view when you're in college that if you write a good paper, if you answer correctly on the test, you're going to be rewarded with a good grade and a commendation and a credit.
Oh, yeah.
There's a point of view that it's a meritocracy. When you get out in the workplace, you find out that just doing a good job often is not enough to either stay on or get promoted.
Exactly, and so I talk about, I really think that women have to internalize this idea that doing your job is a two-part process. One part is doing your job, and the other part is talking in bottom line terms about how you do your job. And I think the next part of it is thinking about how academic institutions can impart this skill set. I've been joking recently that there should be a class called "You Need More Than a Nice Black Suit" that should be taught to all young women, because it's not an ambition gap; it's a skill gap.
Right. Well, and the other thing is, we had talked on a different show one about the DNA of women with financial management. There's also this point of view that's inculcated in us at home, not to brag and not to boast about yourself. If you're a good, other people will notice it. You shouldn't talk about yourself. But in the workplace, you have to brag about yourself, don't you, Hannah?
Oh, you totally have to brag about yourself. And it's not, I think bragging has such an ick factor to it. And I think
it's icky, it's tacky.
It's tacky, but there's a way just to talk about what you do. We were just talking before, and you said, oh, how did you end up in the New York Times?
Right.
And I was bragging, but I don't think it sounded like that. You just talk about your accomplishments.
It was persistent.
Right.
Right.
In a matter-of-fact way. And we need to, again, it sort of goes back to giving women the language to talk about it, because I think that's what it is. There's just a lack of vocabulary for how to talk about these things.
Right.
And men just feel much more comfortable doing, bragging.
Right. So, but you say something else that I think was good advice. You say that before you take your first job or your next job, to do some investigating, do a little bit of due diligence on the company to see if the company is sexist. Are you telling me that in the 21st century we have sexist companies?
Oh my, I am telling you that. I know it's shocking.
On the air.
It's shocking. And I'm willing to stand behind.
On the air, you're going public.
On the air, I'm going public. Well, and I call it a background check in my book. I think you want to know, look, does this company have a culture of sexism? I think you have to look at, have there been lawsuits filed against the company? Think about it as doing research that involves primary and secondary sources, and really find out how
many female officers,
right? What is sort of the culture of promotion? Do men and women get paid the same? Some of that is hard information to get your hands on.
But even so, when you go for an interview, if you see that most of the female are administrative assistants or secretaries, or more of a clerical or lower level management. And most of the men or most of the top managers are men, that gives you some clues also.
Exactly, and I think that actually the most potent source of information is women who no longer work there, because I think you're going to find that women who work there are not going to be as, and of course there are exceptions to this, are not going to be as candid as probably you would need them to be. So find women who, and also maybe that you have a personal connection with, either through an alumni association or a friend of a friend, and get them to tell you what it's really like.
Right, but so you get beyond that, and you're in a company that it seems to be pretty fair and balanced, and your skills are good, and you're able to promote yourself a little bit. But women do a disservice to themselves on the job also, don't they?
Yeah, and I think what we're finding, what's interesting, is that we found that women 1 year out of college make 80% of what their male peers do. And so I think the dialogue about women inequities in the workplace used to be about women who had made it to higher rungs of the ladder, but we're finding out that it sets in immediately. So we need to recognize sort of where we fall short.
But we're falling short because A, it's cultural, but also we contribute to that falling short at times.
Well, I think that we sort of, the fact, it gets a little bit obscured in these college years because we're so successful. I mean, women, 55% of my graduating class was female. When I look at my honors thesis class, the majority of them were female. There is just, you walk around any college campus and it is like
women are succeeding.
It's an alpha girl culture. So we need to start having that dialogue, and not in a sort of scare tactic way, but in a way to say, look, this is not necessarily going to translate into the workplace. And so in one way, it is funny and sort of ironic to think about how a culture of achievement could stymie you, but it does.
Well, you know, academics have always been more or less more likely to be a woman's point per view. But having said that, the other thing is there's sometimes a sense of entitlement. You were so good, you know, now you're in the workplace, you're not so good. But the other, I'm getting to this point of where women can be too sensitive, too hard, too unwilling or not, inability or unwillingness to ask for help. Tell us about some of those things. I thought you gave some good tips in your book.
Yeah, well, I think that anyone, I mean, Tiger Woods has a coach. I think that kind of says it all. Women need
Tiger Woods has a coach.
We all need to build a team of mentors. No one does it alone. And I think, you know,
well,
when
how do you find a mentor?
Well, you know, I say asking someone, will you be my mentor, is the workplace equivalent of like, will you be my boyfriend?
Will you be my boyfriend?
You need to seek out people and be specific. So if I wanted you to be my mentor, I'd say, Judith, how have you gotten to this point? What have you done? You know, and I would ask you very specific, pointed questions, and I would come prepared like a date to talk to you about.
Would you go to another woman? Would you find that there was a willingness on women to help women?
I think this whole sort of devil wears Prada culture is really becoming an anachronism. I think we're shepherding in a new era, and I see all the time, I mean, you just saw with your previous guest, and we exchanged business cards, that there is a real culture of female camaraderie that is sort of burgeoning.
Yeah, well, that's good news.
And I think it's also the storyline that we tell ourselves. The more that we tell ourselves that women aren't helping each other.
But also, I think, too, it is a way to ask. You know, very few people are likely to be taking offense if you say to them, you know, I see here you seem to be so confident about what you're doing. Can I depend on you for advice from time to time?
Right, or can I ask you something?
Or can I ask you something? Most people are flattered by that,
right,
aren't they,
and it's
Hannah?
Exactly, they're very flattered by it. I'm sure you're flattered by it. I'm flattered by it when it happens, and I think that it's an organic process. It's just you're having a conversation with someone. I think the majority of people who are my mentors, and I would consider that I have probably 20 or 25 of them, don't even know that they're my mentor.
Right.
And that women, but I think it is also, you hit on the sort of, there's a psychological and a practical component that women need to realize they do need help. We can't do it all. We can't do it all by ourselves.
It's not like,
whether it's on the home front or in the workplace.
Exactly. And women aren't good about asking help. It's kind of, it almost seems like an admission that you're not perfect.
Right.
Which is another thing that you talk about in your book. Forget about being perfect.
Oh yeah, this is the biggest psychological hurdle and barrier to women's success. I mean, you just can't be perfect, and risk taking, which is what entrepreneurs and CEOs, anyone who's successful does, and perfection is sort of the arch nemesis of that.
And you know, you've got to be prepared. Even speaking up, most people don't want to speak up at a meeting because they don't embarrass themselves by making a mistake.
Right, and but no one ever died for making a mistake.
Right.
So,
and haven't you sat in a meeting I have where somebody finally gives an idea, and I've been sitting there for 5 minutes with the same idea and reluctant to say it, and that person gets accolades. What a wonderful idea! And I think, oh my God, what a jerk was I had that idea 5 minutes ago.
And here's the thing too: sometimes by putting something imperfect out, I mean, I'm a writer, so I go through many drafts of things. So by virtue, you know, if the first draft of something is not perfect, but that's what shapes the ultimate product.
You also say that. One of the best advantages in the workplace is having a tough skin.
Yes.
You don't mean leather by that.
No, I hope not. No.
What do you mean?
I mean not learning, and you touched on this too, learning not to take things personally. The workplace, I mean, there's so much daily gruffness that goes on.
And even women to women can be gruff, right?
Even, yes, women to women can be, men to men. I don't think this is gender biased in any way. Right. And so just learning not to take rejection personally. I mean, if I took every time someone said no to me, me, and I took that as some reflection on me, I mean, I wouldn't have any work.
Yeah, or even, you know, or even a brisk answer from time to time.
Right.
You know,
who knows? Maybe your boss stopped smoking and she's, you know, having a tough day.
Or kids at home or other thing. I think you talk about it. You know, you never know what the backstory is.
Yeah, exactly. You never know what the backstory is, and it also it sort of prohibits you from moving forward in some important ways.
You have to learn, you know, I'm in a male industry, I do manufacturing, and I've had to learn how to handle it when men don't call me back and things like that. It hasn't helped if I say, you know, my feelings are hurt, you didn't call me back, and I figured out for myself, which I call, hey, is everything okay? I'm used to hearing back from you so quickly, I'm wondering if you're okay. And most people immediately take that as in a very good spirit.
Well, Judith, I think you hit on it again. It's all about the languaging and the presentation. And I think saying I feel this way is the F word. And that the more you can frame it in terms of a bottom line, or, you know, I really want to hear back from you so we can move forward on this project, not why did you hurt my feelings? I mean, I think with men and women, that puts everyone in an uncomfortable position.
Yeah. And, you know, I had a boss once that told me, Hannah, if one right is good, two rights are good. Yeah. So it's true. Always another can have a piece of writing that can be very good for you. So, new girl on the job. Are you on the job now?
I am on the job. I work for myself. I am.
Oh, good for you.
What I think would call a multi-platform journalist. I blog, I write, I speak, and I'm working on my second book.
Yeah, good for you. A lot of this happens. A lot of, I guess, men and women, but particularly women, have veered off into entrepreneurship.
Exactly.
Instead of sticking it in. Why is that, you think?
Well, you know, about 3 years ago, 2005, the New York Times ran a headline that said, highly educated women set path to motherhood. I might not be remembering the title exactly. Yeah. But so it started this whole debate about women who had education and they were just going to become mothers and they were going to opt out of the workplace. I see a different trend taking shape, and I think that women are not going to opt out. They're going to opt out of the traditional workforce because, unfortunately, corporate America is not getting hip to what women want fast enough.
There's still a glass ceiling.
There's still a glass ceiling. There's still pay inequity. There's still inflexible work-life balance. I mean, all of these things are improving, but not as fast as women want them to. So you're seeing that, you know, women-owned businesses grew at twice the national rate. A third of my generation is independently employed.
Really, a third of your generation is independent?
So yeah,
that's a big number.
Big number, and I think you're only going to see that grow. And if you talk to young women, which I do quite frequently, you hear that, yeah, I mean, of course, there are some of them that want to rise the ranks within their own companies, but a lot of them say
work for Fortune 500 companies.
But they want to start their own businesses. They want to be entrepreneurial, and they see that as sort of.
Well, you know, if you think about it, and we never thought about the homemaker as being an entrepreneur, but she always was.
Right.
I mean, there was always balancing budgets, doing 14 things at one time. You call yourself a multitasking. I mean, that's a 21st century word. But homemakers, in all generations, that's what they do every day is multitask.
Exactly. But I think women want work environments that are going to allow them to multitask. And if you work, you know, in many...
And perhaps at the same time have families.
And
because we certainly haven't solved who's going to take care of kids while mom and dad are climbing the work ladder.
Exactly. I mean, that's the whole other piece, too, is that how does this generation of women form egalitarian relationships?
Yeah. Well, I liked your book, and good luck to you.
Thank you.
I'm Judith West. You're watching Getting Your Money's Worth, New Girl on the Job. Fun book and some good tips.